Yeah.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to an afternoon Sunday brunch version of the A Game. And with that, coffee in hand, ready to go. I'm Rob Akampora from my bunker in Bradley Beach, New Jersey. Music you just heard from Love in Reverse. Thanks to the guys Mike Ferrantino and them for allowing me to use that as sort of the opening theme for the show. The man to my left, I know him pretty well. I'll say that much. We go back to a station that I'm proudly wearing the shirt FM 106.3 WHTG from. He graduated from there to become the VJ that you know and love from MTV. To continue down his resume, he's written a book. He's co-written another book. He has the syndicated radio show Flashback, which I believe is still going on right now. Former morning DJ in New York, former morning DJ in San Francisco. He's been honored by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's been seen on Access TV at times at the Top 10 Revealed, and recently hosted a little virtual concert with the guys from Bush. If I've missed out anything, we got time to fill in the blanks. Matt Pinfield, what up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, Rob? Good to see you this morning. Doing good. Well, it's morning out here. It's not, it's a little 9 o'clock here in Los Angeles. I'm good, man. I'm doing very well. I'm in. I'm feeling good. It's been crazy. This pandemic thing has been, a little rough on everybody, but it's interesting because I've managed to stay busy regardless. Through all of this. And yet, the radio show is still going on. 9 years I've been doing Flashback.
Wow, yeah. It's been a nice feather in your cap. I mean, I don't think that was expected because we know syndicated radio shows sometimes a year or two and they're gone. So to have that shelf life right now in 9+ years, more power to you. That's great. Yeah,
I mean, especially since there's a lot of things like, that show's up through Westwood One, and as radio has been downsizing. Sadly,
yes.
Not doing as much radio stuff, and that has to do with a lot of the consolidation, as unfortunately. That's always kind of bummed me out. I miss the idea of local. I mean, look, I'm happy to be syndicated around the country, North America. I'm also on the American Forces Network, so wherever we have sold, I'm on in about 118 countries that show Flashback. So that's really cool. But on the other hand, I still love the idea of local radio, of like serving a market and playing local artists, really being there for the sensibilities of people that are in your area, which is the thing about HCG that was so great. I love doing it.
Well, and that's the thing that people need to understand. They know you. Most people know you as the MTV VJ, the guy who's been making all these appearances. But your roots are in radio. You started out at Rutgers University WRSU, parlayed that into becoming a part-time jock at HTG, got involved in the local music scene heavily, and then eventually worked your way up through the chain there, which got you the break at MTV. As a matter of fact, when I think back on that time, it was some crazy times being in that little house on the prairie, as we used to call it, out on Hope Road in Eatontown, New Jersey.
It was the greatest. I mean, I love the radio station. It's amazing. For what we didn't, it was one of those things since it was a mom and pop station owned by Wade, and the opportunity to work there, and also the fact that, listen, maybe we didn't make much money, we weren't paid for it, but we had the opportunity to do a lot of great radio and play with incredible artists. And because I feel like the Asbury Park, or really Monmouth, Ocean County, or New Jersey in general, is a very, very proactive audience that loves music. And I think that they're so involved in going to see live music and supporting bands and artists. It was just the most amazing place to be. And the station really, before the station really grabbed a hold, New York stations like NEW kind of owned the Jersey Shore. And then eventually we took over, and and it even changed the way like artists at the Stone Pony were. I mean, before that, it was a lot of people that were kind of in that Bruce vein. And believe me, I love Bruce Springsteen very much. He was nice enough that when I went to work at MTV, he called my bosses there and told them to look out for me and take care of me.
Wow, that's great.
I didn't know about it until they were teasing me one day. It was really funny. Like my music department, I remember the day very well because. Right shortly before that, I'd run into Bruce, at that club known as, it was either Tramps or Tracks. I think it was maybe Tramps. And
Maybe Tramps, yeah.
Soul Asylum show. And we just started, he and I were talking. Somebody later, I wondered who that guy was with his armor, and he goes, "Oh, Bruce Springsteen." And Bruce was, I always was so proud of Bruce for being, down there.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, me and the music department guys were all like on our way in like a van to the Meadowlands Arena in New Jersey to see Page and Plant. And as we're getting there, those guys are like kind of like imitating Bruce Springsteen and just going, "Oh, Pinfield." And I'm like, "What are you guys on about?" And they're like, "Bruce called the bosses." I go, "Forget the fucking bullshit." I go, "Bruce did." No, wait. No, they go, no, he called the bosses. So he did. And he the word is that he said, "Oh, Pinfield's not from that corporate world. You guys make sure you take care of him. He's a good guy, real music guy." And then the greatest follow-up story to that was, okay, so, we remember when I filled in 93 with Depeche Mode on MTV.
Yes, exactly. That was a groundbreaking moment for you in your career. That really was sort of the launching pad to MTV, that fill-in moment.
Yeah, it was. What's really interesting, oh, by the way, thank you again remember my last show on HTG, you let me do your shift too. So I did an 8-hour shift, because I didn't want to get off the air. It was like, I didn't barricade myself into the studio.
But it was close. It was close.
But you were really kind. You let me do an 8-hour shift.
Right.
And it's really interesting because when I went home that day, I went and I sat at the kitchen table, and I had this really kind of bittersweet feeling knowing that I wasn't going to be on the air anymore. It was like a happy, sad thing because I was like, I felt like something inside I had lost because I loved, having the freedom and the platform that HTG was to break bands and talk about music every day. Yeah. But I also did not want MTV to think that I had a hidden agenda to be on the air. And it was an incredible job to come in as manager of music programming because, it meant you were one of the 10 people that were picking videos, working on the specials, the unplugs,
right,
everything else. And it was just an incredible experience. But you remember that I remember that final day. But so moving back to the Bruce Springsteen story, he was, I remember I was thinking at that point, all right, now I'm not on the air there at this point. So I'm, it's early 95. It would be quite a few. It would be a few months before I'd taken over 120 minutes. And although Lou Sargent was doing it, he didn't want to. He was like, "Why don't you put Matt on the air doing it?" And so did Rick Henke, the producer. But and they finally, I ended up doing it. One day they said to me, "Oh, we're going to put you on the air for 3 weeks. We'll see how it goes." No promises. And then, of course, when I did Oasis for Morning Glory, right at the end of the show, the English woman who was the head of the DJ's VJ said, I did a total 180. This show is yours. You're going to host this every week." It was pretty amazing. But before that, I thought in my mind, I was like, well, Bruce isn't going to remember me at this point. It's really nice that he said that stuff. So this is before I was on the air regularly at MTV. And one day we're going to see Oasis with this woman, Lauren Levine, who was the one who was the head of the VJs. Like that. She was like the one who took care of on-air talent, even though Andy Schoen was like the real boss who hired me there,
right?
Who really changed my life. Andy, I tell him that all the time. I said, I have to thank him for all of that, for giving me that shot. And
sure.
But anyway, so we're going to see Oasis one day, and she's like, "Hey, Bruce was asking about you last night." I'm like, "What?" And it turns out it was around the time that Michael Jackson had put out this history. Double greatest hit CD, and he made this bombastic video movie with this statue of him somewhere in Yugoslavia with helicopters going around it. I mean, it was this insane thing that he had done, and they were bringing us in and out of Sony Music Studios to watch it in their theater area. So, they bring in the MTV Music Department, then the VH1 Music Department, then they bring in Diane Sawyer and Tom Brokaw,
right.
Later that night, the main bosses from MTV, like Tom Freston and Judy McGrath and Van Tuffer and all those people were going in there. And Bruce is rehearsing with the E Street Band in there for his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. And they're coming out of watching that video, and they walk into this room. And, Bruce is not really paying attention. They're playing, and they're standing watching him. They figure it's okay to go in there. He finishes up a song, and he turns around and he looks at them, and they go, "Hey, Bruce, how you doing?" And he goes, "I'm doing good." He goes, "You guys taking care of Pinfield?"
Yeah.
And they go, "Yeah, of course." He goes, "All right." And he turns around and starts playing a song again. That's
beautiful.
The story that Lauren Levine told me. And this is while I wasn't on the air yet. So that was like so beautiful. Yeah. 7 years later, I'm working at Bruce's record label at Columbia Records.
Right. You became an A&R rep. You signed a band called Crossfade. You worked with Coheed and Cambria.
Yeah,
Good run.
Yeah, it was definitely a good run. I mean, it was amazing. But it was funny because, here I was. You had to be like, I got promoted to vice president. So when The Rising came out, if you were, I mean, not you had to be, but if you were promoted to vice president, you would be able to come when they did these special events in the Sony Club upstairs. And Bruce was brought in the Rising album to play for everybody. And, we're sitting on these chairs and there's lyric sheets. There's like a lyric book. And I waited 7 years to thank Bruce for that. So like at the end of the album, we're walking by, kind of like people are like, going by to say hello to him. And I walk and I go, "Bruce, man," he goes, "Matt, how you doing?" I go, "Bruce, I just wanted to thank you, man, for making those phone calls and the things you said to MTV when I first went to work there. I want you to know how much I appreciate that." He goes, "Oh, of course, man, no problem." He goes, "What do you think of the album?" Because he's so unassuming. The thing is, he did that because he wanted to do that, and you could pay Bruce to endorse somebody or. I mean, he's so pure, the deal. So
sure,
that was a pretty amazing thing for me. But yeah, that's it's been an incredible ride, and that meant so much, especially being a Jersey guy,
Absolutely, brother. Matt Pinfield's here on the A Game. Since we are reminiscing a little bit, and we did mention 106.3. Ming, there's a great photo of him and his daughter I'd love to put up here, and this is what the studio looked like back in the day. I mean, do you remember how old Jess was there? Maybe?
Yeah, she was about 8 years old, Rob.
Right.
And I remember it was like, I think I already knew that I was leaving for MTV at that time. And it was, she came to work with me one day and we put her on the air and she was giving advice to people and she was doing like the weather or something. We have like there's another photo of it. It's great now. I mean, she's 33 now. She just wrote a screenplay for Film Day, filmed right before the pandemic.
Fantastic.
And Chris North is in it, and this and Levin, who is so it's like she's doing her thing. It's really great. She's actually moving out here.
Wow, that'll be good. That's gonna be a good thing.
Live here with me until they find a place, but they're moving out here in September. So.
There's actually a great story that I want to reveal, and it does involve your daughter. It was another time. She happened to be at the station. She wasn't coming on the air per se, but she happened to be at the station. So this is probably around 1993, because I'm trying to remember the Buzzcocks album had just come out, and they were doing a comeback tour, the first album they've done in years. So Pete Shelley's at the station. You're on the air. And I remember at one point, Jess stops in the studio. And Pete Shelley is asking her the question, "Well, who's your favorite band, Jess?" He doesn't say the Buzzcocks, but he very quietly, very politely, like, "You should have said the Buzzcocks."
That was the funniest thing ever. It was one of the first bands she ever knew who to say their names because of Judy Mallon at the record store, Music in a Different Kitchen. She used to tell her
right
Buzzcocks, which was pretty funny when she was really young. But there's a great pictures of her at the station with the Buzzcocks. With Pop Will Eat Itself, and of course, Clint from Pop Will Eat Itself went on to do, all the scoring of movies like Requiem for a Dream,
The
Wrestler, Black Swan, Pie First. I mean, Clint went from being in Pop Will Eat Itself to being this huge Hollywood scorer because, he was Darren Aronofsky had never made a film and Clint had never made a movie, and they were introduced by this woman from TBT, Sue Zimmerman, and she said, "You guys should know each other." And that changed their lives, of course, forever. But it's amazing. It was so much fun. It was great to bring my daughter in there.
Yeah.
I have two daughters. I'm close.
Yeah. By the way, Maya, how is she doing?
She's doing amazing. She's down in Florida. She's really into bodybuilding, believe it or not. Like she like when she got out of Catholic school, she went to high school at a music and arts charter high school, which a lot of people from that part of Florida had gone to, and she'd done extremely well, so well that she got a full ride to Berkeley and Boston on a scholarship for acting because they not only have a music program, but they have an acting program. And she got up there and she was like, "Dad, I'm a little bored. They tell us we don't have to try out for the semester for the play. They do 2 plays a year. Right. She goes, we're probably not going to get a part because we're freshmen. She goes, but I'm bored. I'm going to go try out anyway. And she got one of the leads. She got one of the leads. Yeah. So I flew from California for the dress rehearsal, watched all her performances there in Boston. And then the Christmas and holiday break comes along. She goes home and she calls me and goes, "Dad, I don't want to be an actress anymore. I want to work in health sciences." I'm like, "All right, you got it." Sure. She basically shifted gears. And now she's like bodybuilding. She's like, she's intense, man. She's 30 pounds and she can lift 200 pounds. So my kids are as intense as I am. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, let me ask you, did Maya rub off on you? Because obviously you really got into the whole gym atmosphere and working out. And there's a lot of factors we'll get into with that. But was she a big help in you getting into that regime that you've been trying to stick to?
No. I mean, she's definitely been encouraging. I mean, it was something that I really wanted to do for a while. Even before I got hit by the car in that really, crazy, unfortunate accident, when I was a pedestrian here in Hollywood, literally like down the street from where I am right now in my play. I decided that I was really going to try and get in shape. And what I had done was, there was a guy who was a screenplay writer out here who also moonlighted working at one of the local stores. And he used to always see me and he was talking to me. And he goes, "Man, you know what?" He goes, "You should," and he was like in his 30s, he was a really young guy. And he goes, "You should come up, climb the Hollywood stairs with me." And so there's these famous Hollywood stairs up the canyon. It's the same stairs where like Laurel and Hardy were carrying a piano down it, I think, like trying to get down the crazy stairs. There's 180 up and 180 down. And I remember going with him. We would start right where I live here, and we'd go there. We'd walk. It's about a mile. We'd walk, and then we'd go up the stairs. And we started doing it 2 times. So that's like 160 times 2. So we went from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8, and at the end I was doing it 10 times in a row in an hour and a half. So I was doing, like 3,600 stairs.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It was, you talk about being winded and going, "What? Am I going to die?" It was brutal. But but that's the thing that started getting me into shape. And I was so into the regimen and working on it. And then the unfortunate thing was on December 3rd, 2018, I was hit by that car.
Yeah, Matt, since you bring it up, I mean, if you don't mind, you actually posted a photo of you in the hospital with the accident. And for people who don't know, if we could just flash it for a second, because this accident was just totally legit. I mean, many of your friends were looking at this and going, "Are you going to live?" I mean, there had to be that question going through your head of like, you're sitting there, you've just been hit by a car, and you have things broken, this gash over your head. Yeah. I mean, I got
to tell you, well, it's really crazy because it was about 7:45 at night. I was coming from across the street to a little Thai restaurant and a coffee shop.
Right.
And I was walking across the street, and the traffic on Franklin was unusually quiet for that time of night. I mean, this road is extremely busy because the entrance to the 101 highway is not too far away.
Okay.
And I was walking across, and I'm looking both ways, and it's not too bad. And I get to the 3rd lane, and I'm looking as I'm getting into it. And all of a sudden, I look to the right, and I see a car gunning towards me. And I jumped. I caught it out of the corner of my eye. I jumped up to try and get out of the way of the car, and it caught my leg. So it broke my leg in half. I had a compound fracture. The bone was out on the leg. I went up through the windshield with my head. Like I went up over into the car, I went through the windshield. I was conscious for the whole thing, but it was so fast. I don't remember going through the windshield, but the next minute, I do remember spinning off the hood of the car. She hit the brakes, and it's really weird. They say when you're in these crisis moments, there's certain things you remember. I remember the heat of the engine and the smell of the engine.
Wow.
Spun off the hood of the car, landed 15 feet away on my back and on my head. And miraculously, as the EMS guy said, and it took them 9 minutes to get there. Thank God that one artery in my leg wasn't severed because I was bleeding out everywhere. My head was open. And literally there were witnesses or people around there, and my phone survived somehow. So my phone, one of my neighbors, I go, well, get my phone. And, I didn't want to call any of my direct family members. They were all on the East Coast. So I called my ex-girlfriend, because she was my girlfriend at the time. And she was like, down like in Orange County, and told her that I'd been hit by the car. And I didn't know if I was going to live or die. I mean, I was sitting there. It was really crazy. I was in adrenaline shock. I was laying. At one point, I actually tried to lift myself off the ground until I looked at my leg that looked like a pretzel. And I was like,
yeah, that's not happening. Yeah.
It was unreal. I ended up, they had to bring a tarp and carry me into the EMS truck. And they cut all my clothes off. It's really funny, too. I had this Bob Dylan, the band, Basement Tape shirt on. And I'm friends with a bunch of group of guys, and Sebastian Robertson, Robbie Robertson's son. I told him the story, and a week later he showed up with a T-shirt because mine was destroyed from the blood off. He goes, I brought you a shirt, Matt. Which is so cool. And so I'm laying there, and they have to put morphine in. They cut all my clothes off. They put a gown on me, whatever it is, and they go to me, can you feel your toes? And I said, yes, I can feel my toes. And they look at me and they go, man, you are a miracle. They go, you are a miracle. They go, listen, we've seen people that were hit less than you, that were brain damaged or brain dead, paralyzed from the neck down. So that's what they were worried about. That's why they asked me if I could feel my toes. So it was an absolute miracle that I got out of there with, my face could have been smashed up too, but I have that scar, and the guy he was a young Indian doctor from Beverly Hills who did it. Luckily, they brought me to the right hospital. They brought me to Cedars-Sinai, which is like the best hospital in Los Angeles. It could have been like another one that some of them aren't quite as good. I get to the emergency room, I don't really remember a lot of that because at this point I'm on morphine, but I do remember because my head was torn open, and there's a photo that exists of that. It's really gruesome.
Ooh, yeah.
TMZ blurred it out because it was so gruesome. And, other people tried to post it on Facebook, and it would immediately flash up, warning, this photo contains violent or offensive material.
Yeah.
Swipe at your own risk or whatever.
Yeah.
It was, I'm glad they took a photo so you could see just how crazy. It was split open. And so I'm laying there, and I can hear the doctor, right? I can hear them talking, and they're kind of like, you can hear things going on around me. And one doctor goes to the other, are you going to use staples on him? And the guy goes, oh, man, I watched this guy growing up on MTV. He goes, no. He's a real rock guy. He goes, I'm gonna sew him up. I'm gonna take care of it. And so he sewed me up very slowly, which meant the scar ended up being so much clearer because I would have looked like Frankenstein with staples,
Right.
But it was very painful. I'm like, can you put a little more? Something to numb that in there. And he's still gonna be about like AC/DC and and the Clash or something while he's throwing me up, because obviously he wants me to get through that. Had all kinds of CAT scans. It was unbelievable. And I left. The picture you showed, I'm eating a muffin. I don't eat muffins, but my friend,
that's true.
A friend of mine, the guy next to me manages Tool, right? He goes, I brought you some muffins. So like all of a sudden that picture ends up like all over the press.
Right, exactly.
It's like the most ridiculous shot ever. But I love bagels. I miss the Jersey bagels.
Come on. You're never going to get a good bagel or a good slice of pizza in Cali. Sorry, you're just not.
Yeah, you can't. The bagels and the pizza and the Portuguese food from Newark and everything, you can't touch it.
Exactly.
Matt
Matt Pinfield here on the A Game as we're reminiscing about a lot of things, and there's a lot to talk about. Thank you for bringing up the accident.
And I just want to say, it was amazing. TMZ broke the story, and then it was everywhere in the world. And it was. TMZ, luckily, they really like me. Like, they always say nice things. They always trash everybody. For some reason, they really like me. And there's a video that exists on YouTube, but that's a short version of. They ran an interview of me from my hospital bed for 7 minutes.
And, I remember this. It was like, first off, I don't know many people that would want a camera crew around you under these circumstances, but you just seemed, and I remember watching it, and I'm kind of going, for a guy who's just had his world rocked, he seems to be handling this pretty well. I mean, I don't know how many people would have been able to handle all of that at that point. I don't know who would want to, you know what I mean?
I was in that Cedars-Sinai, that hospital for about 8 days. but I had so many visitors, man. I mean, it was insane. So many, and then they moved me to another hospital, California Rehabilitation Institute, where like you do physical therapy, like you see videos of like, guys coming back from the war. It was that kind of thing. And I remember, who else was in there for physical therapy? It was Clarence Williams III, Link on the
my God, the Mod Squad, yes.
Who was also in Purple Rain, as the father. But he was there. But I mean, like I said, I had so much support and friends, and I had a really positive attitude towards it. I was glad. I was grateful to be alive. I mean, for me, I mean, that was the most important thing. And, me, I've always been very open about everything. So,
well, you say that, and we'll prove that point. The recent article that came out in Rolling Stone, you were brutally open, brutally honest. And, you said 3 words that really stood out to me in that article. I am accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, some people go through their whole life not being able to say that. You were just like so raw in that Rolling Stone interview to kind of talk about everything that went on and what the journey was trying to handle all these things during the pandemic. A lot of people don't realize that as we're all dealing with this, we all have mental pressures and mental issues that could come about of this. This is not a normal circumstance for any of us to live in. And if you're somebody battling demons, it probably is about 1,000 times harder.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of, a lot of people have suffered pretty badly because, they're so used to having the fellowship and recovery of the program where they can, they're with their friends. I mean, that was my deal. I'm involved with so many people, a lot of comedians, a lot of actors, a lot of musicians. We have like a group of guys that, we hang together, and we do our meetings together.
Right.
And then it went to just Zoom meetings, which was a lot. There were just so many different, factors involved in it. But I was very open about, the fact that I had relapsed. I had started drinking again. And then, my friends were figured that out and I wasn't falling on the ground drunk or anything like that, but I was, they could tell that like my speech, they knew that I relapsed and they were like, we're going to help you get help. And then the guys, I was doing this streaming show, which I still do, like once a week called In a Lonely Place. That's it's like a streaming thing I do for Music Cares. So the very people that I was raising money for musicians and for, other people, they were like, we think you should go to a really good place this time for treatment. And halfway up there, one of my very good friends is driving me and to Northern California. And he goes, oh, by the way, we started a GoFundMe. I'm like, what? I go, you're asking people to give money for my recovery during a pandemic? I was horrified by that idea because I didn't want to ask anybody for anything, and I said, well, I would, maybe there's a way I can just pay it back. And he did this thing, and I went dark on social media when I got there for a month. But then, Rolling Stone wrote the first article about the GoFundMe, and then they reached their goal, and it was an incredible experience for me. I was very, very grateful, very lucky to get a reboot. I feel unbelievably well now. I feel great. I'm in a good mental space. It was a tough one, but by being very honest in that article, by being completely transparent, showing everybody everything, the best parts, there's a lot of good parts about it. One of them is, nobody can talk shit because I was so open and honest.
Yes.
Hey, Matt used to have a problem with alcohol and cocaine. And they're like, yeah, and what? Yeah, all right. You know what I mean? That's okay. Because, people, what matters the most is you do something about it. That's the most important thing. And, I posted something because while I was doing that Bush virtual concert that I was hosting, because you have no idea how many people have written to me since that article from Australia, Paris, tons of people from like all over the country just saying, thank you so much for talking about what we're going through, either with family members or themselves. And one woman from New York City wrote to me, and she was, I lost my son. He was 30 years old. He overdosed and died during the pandemic. And she said that his best friend, who had 5.5 years clean, had died. And it, it's just, those are the saddest things. So, I think the reality is that I did that so that other people that were going through the same thing or similar things out there knew they weren't alone. And that's a little bit And there was something else, I was talking about it during that Bush thing. As I said, I was talking to this one guy, and we were talking, and he goes, I go, yeah, I go, we're all going through this in a different way. Everybody's affected.
Yes.
But we're not all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and goes, yeah, but we're all in the same storm. And I go, that's genius. So I posted.
I was about to say, you did post this on Facebook because I saw this. It came up within the last 24 hours. I was going to bring up that quote. I'm glad you did that. Yeah,
it's I said, we're not all in the same boat, but we're definitely all in the same storm. And we deal with it in different ways. And so many people have been affected, have lost jobs. I mean, especially in our industry, radio's downsized, but I mean, you look at in the music business, of course, without touring, without shows. I mean, certainly like the much bigger artists, they don't really have anything to worry about. They can coast through that period of time, but the artists that depend on touring every year and, printed up all their merch and their roadies, they're, the people, their guitar techs, they're, everybody else, their merch person. Those people are out of work. It's just the saddest thing. So, we're banding together to try and do as much as we can. And,
amen. Absolutely, we are. Yeah. Matt Pinfield here on the A Game. Okay, I'm going to get a little lighter here now because you mentioned your T-shirts. And that's become a big thing with you. You and your T-shirts go hand in hand. Now, I'm going to show a photo. There's actually a photo of Matt without a T-shirt, which I'll get to in a second. But when it comes to your T-shirts, it's all about, the T-shirt of the day. I see it on Facebook. It's because that is really your thing. But before you even did that, Ming, there is a classic T-shirt from Nirvana that has Matt's head on it. There it is.
It's great.
This is a collector's item now, Matt. Pinfield Naughty Mind. You come up and see this, and it's like it automatically springs attention. And I'll show two of the other T-shirts that came out over the years, but that one came out like, 92, I think, that T-shirt?
Yeah, it was it was 92. Cliff Galbraith, who's, one of my best friends, has been for, at least more than I understand, probably 30 years. Cliff and I have been so close. And, he made those T-shirts. We just because he had the T-shirt company, Talking Tops, and he thought it would be a really good idea. It was really actually Judy Mallon who ran the record store, Music in Different Kitchen. There was a Nirvana mobile of the baby floating around spinning in the record store. And there's a picture of me on stage singing at the Court Tavern with Opie and Vala, my cover band that we used to do all the shows with. And she cut out the head and stuck it on the mobile. And Cliff thought, I got to make a T-shirt out of it. This is unbelievable. That's when the T-shirts started happening, like Red Hot Chili Pinfields.
Matter of fact, Ming, show the Red Hot Chili Pinfields when it's there it is. Tongue, Love, Lick, and Magic.
It's really funny. I don't remember posing for it, but those are all classic shots of my. It's just
exactly
really, really funny. I mean, Cliff is a genius. In fact, he just recently did the logo for my streaming show In a Lonely Place that I do. He created. Cool. So which is very cool. And I was talking to him a lot during the pandemic. But again, I'm for all the things I talked about, and I'll say once again, the Rolling Stone article. The reason why I did that was to help other people out there, other alcoholics, other addicts, other people that are struggling with any kind of adversities. Right. It was a really interesting story that the editor of Rolling Stone said that this is the craziest story. When he was reached out to by Chris Trevero, the guy who put together that GoFundMe, he was just reaching out to them saying, I don't know if you want to cover this. And he wrote back to Chris, he goes, let me tell you a story. He goes, Matt, it was an intern when I was 17 at MTV. He goes, I went up to everybody there. I needed help with my paper to graduate high school. He goes, everyone, he said, turned him down. And he said, I went up to Matt, and Matt said, how much time do you need? He goes, you got an hour? I said, yeah, come to my office tomorrow. And so he said, they never forgot that because, that was the thing that no one else would give him the time of day. And I spent an hour with him to help him out because I want, I always try to help out young people, help people get a leg up. And that's why Rolling Stone was like, well, we really want to do something about this. So anyway, we're moving it, look, you see, I'm really happy. I'm like in the greatest mood and spirit ever, I mean, that's a bump in the road. It's like my friend Pete Santiago says, he goes, the company is greater than the setback. And I always talk about that. It's a great line. It's I'm in great spirits. I just there's a lot of things that are in the works, like the
right.
There's a TV show that I shot before I was hit by the car, and the incredible thing was I was supposed to shoot most of my scenes the day after I got hit by the car, but because
I didn't know that. Okay,
but because it rarely rains in Los Angeles, they were shooting some scenes at the Santa Monica Pier, and they're like, "Oh, it's going to rain tomorrow night," and I get a call from the director. Goes, "Hey, Matt, can you get focused to remember all your lines for all your scenes by tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah." I go, "Well, what am I saying?" No, I don't think so.
Right.
We went and shot all those scenes, and it was with, the show's really cool. It's called Paradise City. We'll know where it's going to be landing soon. It could be show, it could be Amazon Prime, but it's it's all these people in it, like Bella Thorne, who's that young actress, Cameron, the guy who passed away, the young actor who passed away from that seizure, which was really sad because they were such great people to work with. And then it was like people from Entourage, Sons of Anarchy, and The Sopranos, like Di Matteo and Mark Boone Jr. It was like a bunch. It was a really fun show to do, and I'm on like 4 episodes of that. And
that's great.
Also, go ahead.
I was about to say, in the acting world, there was another project that was getting off the ground. I remember hearing about it, DOA the movie, which had John Doe from X in it. It also had the very funny John Biner, who I saw on all the game shows back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, what was going on with that? Is that going to see the light of day?
Yes, it is. I mean, they're editing it. They were in the process of editing it, and the husband and wife team that edited it, sadly, she had gotten cancer and passed away. So that put the editing process of that film on hold. But it was so great to shoot with John Doe. John Doe is such a professional, such a great guy. Throughout the movie, it just keeps coming back to me and John Doe. Like I play the police captain.
Right.
He's like the guy who gets poisoned. If you've seen the original film noir, brilliant 40s version of DOA, there was a remake done in like the 80s with Dennis Quaid, and it was shitty. It was no good. But this, really cool. You got all the classic cars, and it's shot in black and white. It's an incredible film. I think people are going to really like it when it finally comes out.
A real interesting little tidbit. If I can put this little tidbit about the movie in, was talk about producing radio. Kurt St. Thomas, who is the director of the film, is that the same Kurt St. Thomas who worked in Boston radio?
Yes, it is. Of course, yeah. Kurt and I,
thought so.
I've stayed friends like with so many of those people. I mean, you and I know it was when I was program director, music director, and when you were music director with me, we were a close-knit group of people. There were only like 13 alternative stations back then.
Right.
In the country. And then when the Nirvana explosion took place in grunge, a lot of other stations signed on, but it was not, I seem to remember maybe 13 to 18 stations in its original period, and HCG was so great, I mean, again, thanks to Rich Robinson and Mike Marone for
absolutely
going there and convincing Fake 8 this a radio station. You don't have to play beautiful music. And I give Rich and Mike so much love and respect for that. Because I mean, again, they hired me, and I love those guys too. So there's so much history there. But Kurt St. Thomas, man, he was he worked in Boston at FNX. Right. He was on K-Rock out here for a while. I think he was on Indy 103.1, and he lives in St. Augustine. And I have a lot of family in Jacksonville, obviously, and all over the South. Because everybody from Jersey moved south.
True.
And then I married into a Florida family. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, but so Kurt, when I found out he was down there, originally he called me up and said, "Hey, Matt, I'm making this movie. I really think I want you to be the police captain in it." And I'm like, that sounds awesome. I got to do, the TV things with Fred Armisen called me up and I got to be in Portland.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up. The Portlandia episode is fantastic. And that had to be a real, oh my God, Fred Armisen's a fan of mine. He wants me to come on Portlandia. How cool of a moment is that?
It was unbelievable. It was so great, and they reached out to me and said, "You think you do this?" And I said, "Hell yeah, of course I do it." Then they reached out to Kurt Loder, Tabitha Soren, and it was so much fun because I guess those were Fred and Kerry's, we were their favorite 3 people on there. They wanted to have us on. That episode was so much fun. Take Back MTV, we're all like in burglar outfits, so like we're all dressed in black, and we break into the fake MTV, and I clothesline that girl. It's like really, and we lived literally almost every part of it. Like we just went for it. There was a working script, but we just ended up we just ended up ad-libbing most of it. It was such a fun thing, and there were so many great people that did cameos on that show. And Yahoo Entertainment, we were by the people there. They're the best cameo of all of them. I don't know. I mean, Eddie Vedder and Steve Buscemi and all the other guys were pretty great too. But I loved doing it, and I've never been, for all the bands I had done work with in Seattle, like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and everybody, and doing album specials and flying to Seattle and working there, and I'd never been to Portland. So when they booked me, I was like, hey, can you give me like a day on each side of that so I can kind of explore the city? And they're like, yeah, no problem, man. So I went around and got to know Portland, and that was very cool. And then speaking of doing things like that, I had a small part in Dennis Leary's Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll,
right?
And that was because I loved Dennis and I loved Rescue Me, and Rescue Me was ending. I'm like, shit, I can't, And so I mentioned to Dennis, I go, man, I'd love to be in your new show if that's. And then I get a call that he wrote me into an episode, which was really, really nice of him to do, which was cool. So It's fun. You know what I mean? It's fun. Like in Paradise City, the new show, I play myself. And I play myself in a lot of things. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's fun. You know what I mean? I had a lot of fun doing it.
On top of all this, Matt Pinfield's also an author. Let's go back. Ming, give him the copy of the book up there so people can see it. All the things that I have done, my insane, improbable rock life has been out for a couple of years. It's still out there. Will we see a follow-up to that book, Matt?
Yeah, you definitely will. I mean, first of all, there's so many. It's really interesting. I was approached by a lot of different people about actually making movies, miniseries. There's still people that have been talking about it for a while. I'm kind of glad that nothing really happened right after the book came out. One of my friends had started working on what he was going to do as a documentary, and then he kind of stopped because one of the other guys involved in that got sick. But I'm kind of, so much has happened since then. You know what I mean? I got hit by a car. There's a lot of stuff to triumph over, a lot of experiences. So there will be a second book. And there's a lot of things, like I was talking about Regis Philbin dying. And when I was on Regis and Kathy Lee, and Regis like literally ripped up the questions that the producer gave him. I'm going to have everybody email right now because I want to know if you're for real or if I'm going to send you home with your tail between your legs. And then I killed it. You know what I mean? But he was a nice man. He was great. He came in before the show. So anyway, somebody goes, is that in your book? They said that on social media today. I said, no, it's not. There's plenty of stories I forgot or we didn't have room for. There's so much stuff. But, I loved writing that book. It took me about a year. I wrote it with Mitchell Cohen, who, oddly enough, Mitchell, was a writer for tons of magazines like Cream. His writing resume is unbelievable. He did A&R, for Arista. He was doing A&R at Columbia when I was there. So he was the guy who would write Donnie Ienner's speeches and stuff, and he was just this great guy who had been there for long. He's 10 years older than me. So how I ended up doing the book was like the guys from Pearl Jam were saying to me, I remember going, man, why don't you write a book? You got so many stories. And I said, that's a really good idea. And I think at this time, there was a period where I'd gone through a breakup and I was like, I feel like doing something really creative that's going to kind of take my mind off this recent ending of a relationship. And so I reached out to Danny Goldberg, who, wrote a book, most recently about his relationship with Kurt Cobain because he managed Kurt Cobain. And Kurt Cobain said that Danny was more of a father to him than his own father. He loved Danny very much. And Danny was one of the two managers of Nirvana. Danny also worked with Led Zeppelin. He was their on the planes with those guys in their heyday, as their head PR guy. But, pretty amazing stuff. But Danny had said that to me himself when he came up to be a guest on my morning show on RXP in New York City. And I was promoting his great book called Bumping Into Geniuses. And so I called him and I said, Danny, man, I'm really thinking about doing this book. And he goes, I'll tell you what. I go, Danny, you know, because you've authored so many books already. What's the right thing for me to do? He goes, well, you know what you do? You write some sample chapters, like, you know, not too long, but write some sample chapters, like 3 or 4. Right. He goes, bring them up to me. I'll help you edit them. And he goes, I'll look into seeing if there are any of the people that I know are interested in representing you. And the best part was Danny said, he goes, you know, my literary agent at Paradigm, he goes, if she doesn't think she can sell the book, she's not going to candy coat it. She's going to be like, you know, like kind of shoot it down, like, and you know, and not in a very polite way.
Right.
And she saw it and she read it and she said, I can sell this book, which was unbelievable. So she became my literary agent, and she knew I had ADHD. Who doesn't? You know, like I can talk forever, but I can tell stories. But to form it into a book, I needed somebody to help me edit what I wrote. And
sure.
So she goes, there's one guy at Spin. She goes, there's also a guy named Mitchell Cohen. I looked at her and went, Mitchell Cohen. I go, Mitchell and I were both vice presidents at Columbia Records and A&R. I know very well. So I said, she called him up and he said he wanted to do it. So me and Mitchell, we used to just meet, you know, over in, he lives by like the Strand Bookstore in New York City, which is on East 13th. And we'd meet up there. And we worked on it for, I don't know, like 8 months, you know, like we just kept, you know, kind of putting stories together and deciding what we were going to do. And Mitchell was amazing. He was such a great guy to work with. You know, and then, you know, of course, you know, I had to go through the legal vetting to make sure that like everybody was cool. Like Billy Idol talking about the party we did, and everybody else, Manson and all these people. Of course, the people from U2 and, you know, Bowie's people. And, you know, it was everybody, you know, to make sure everything was honest and true. They do legal vetting. Nobody wants a lawsuit. You know what I mean? Especially Scribner. It was a big publisher, Scribner. Mm-hmm. So we got through that, and then the book came out. It was kind of, my life was going crazy all at the same time. I just moved to San Francisco. I was doing a morning show. I was tracking the night show, doing 2 syndicated shows, doing a podcast. And then I was trying to go on the road and do
the book tour. Yeah.
And I did the one in Jersey with Rob Sheffield from Rolling Stone, did the Q&A with me there. Richard Barone from the Bongos, Jersey legend, did the one at Rough Trade in Brooklyn. And then I had, you know, other people do them at Amoeba in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and Sweetwater Music Hall, which Bob Weir and Grateful Dead owns, is this venue. And they did one where I was on stage with this artist, Matt Nathanson, did the interview there. I couldn't do them all because I remember like Patrick Carney from the Black Keys was going to do it in Nashville, but like I had a new job. I couldn't. That's the reason why I didn't end up narrating the book for Audible and the books on CD, was I didn't have the time. That was the one thing that had to fall by the wayside, was my voice actually reading the book, the one that's out on Audible and everywhere. And, you know, the good news is that Judd Apatow recently said, you know, like it's really funny because we posted about it. So I ran into Judd and he's like, Matt, hey, man, I bought your book. I go, well, what'd you think about it, Judd? He goes, I fucking loved it, man. He goes, the stories were great. And so I had not seen Judd in a long time. I mean, the last time I'd seen Judd Apatow, it was me, him, and Robert and Dean DeLeo from the Jersey Shore, Point Pleasant Beach. Mm-hmm. It was Dean's birthday, and it was just me, Judd, Robert, and Dean having dinner in Santa Monica. And that was when Freaks and Geeks was out. So it was before Judd really blew up. So we had not seen each other in a long time. But because, you know, we posted about that, all of a sudden, out of the blue, Simon & Schuster and Scribner put the paperback back on the market. Like it was never out. They never released the paperback. So it was released September 9th, 2016, a week before Bruce's book. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I know, it's going on the schedule again, which was very, very exciting. So now there's a paperback out of the book because the hardcovers are, you know, like they're no longer pressing the hardcovers. But it was a great experience for me. And, you know, I got to say something about Danny Goldberg. One of the nicest guys in the world. I love Danny. And Danny never asked me for a dime to do all that stuff for me. But of course, as soon as I got my advance for the book, I paid him right away. Like I called them and I said, Danny, I love you, man. Thank you so much for helping me get this. And I sent him a check immediately, you know? I mean, you know, so, you know, because, you know, some people will try to rake you over the coals for everything and not do shit for and Danny really do a selfless thing helping me out. So I made sure that I took care of him.
Happy to have Matt Pinfield here on the A Game. Okay, as we get ready to wrap up, random shot segment. These are just random questions. A little bit about knowing you, a little bit about your dive into social media, and a couple of interesting stories. I'm going to give you one pass on this. I think when you hear one of the questions, you're going to go, got to pass. But we'll get started with the fact that, well, today's Mick Jagger's birthday. Happy 77th to Mick Jagger. Better Stones, 60 Stones or 70 Stones?
Well, you know what, man? I love them both. I interviewed the Stones. I'm like one of the only people who's interviewed the Stones all together. It was 2004. In 35 years, I got to interview all of them except Bill Wyman because he was no longer in the band.
Right.
But all four of them, I did an album special for A Bigger Bang, and they were awesome. I mean, Keith was joking around. Mick was a consummate gentleman. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Ronnie and Charlie were cool. That was a beautiful experience. I think that I love the 60s and 70s. The 80s I could take or leave, except for like Back to You. And although I do like Emotional Rescue, though. I mean, like, there are I'm a huge Stones fan, so I mean I love that stuff. But you say 60s or 70s. It's funny because I love them both for different ways. Okay. There's a Brian Jones era, there's a Mick Taylor era, there's a Ronnie Wood era. So man, that's a hard one.
Okay, fair enough. You are a man who has been a club DJ, so there's something precious about vinyl. So I hear a story that you actually ate birthday cake off a 12-inch vinyl. That's sacrilege.
Oh, no, it was funny. And here's the really funny part about it.
Okay.
So a band called Bros. There's like a documentary out about them somewhere. I mean, but we thought they sucked. We bought the record. Somebody's like, this is the next big thing from England. And they had a song, Will I Be Famous? And my friend Santiago, we were out with a group of people, going to go to the Melon. And I remember it was so funny because we were having this big dinner for my birthday at this Portuguese restaurant, Spanish restaurant in New Brunswick. And Pete knew I hated the record and already had it. So as a joke, he brought it wrapped. And the next thing he looks over and he had my birthday cake. I'm eating the birthday cake off the record, cutting the cake because that's about what it was worth. And me, I'm very positive about music all the time. Yes. And I've been that kind of guy that, like, if you can't say something positive about something, just don't. But the truth is, I hated that Bros record. The irony is, years later, the guy who had to be the A&R guy on that record became my boss.
Oh no!
One of my bosses. This is the best part. I forgot about the eating it off the cake, and he goes to me. This is like years later because we're still very, very close. His name's John Delp. He's after Don DeVito, the legend of A&R, passed away at Columbia Records. John Delp is the longest running. He's got the oldest phone number in the Sony building, of course. And John told me one day, we worked on so many things together, and I love the guy. He was one of my mentors. He goes, "Hey Matt, by the way, he goes, remember that story you told one time you were at a dinner about eating the birthday cake off the Bros record?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "That was my record." I go, "Oh, John, I'm sorry." And then he goes to me. He goes, "It was really funny." He goes, "And it was basically something I had to work for the UK. It wasn't like I signed them." Right. You know what I mean? Like, end up working for the guy. That's why you never know, man.
Exactly. It's a small world. Random shots with Matt Pinfield. Okay. When it comes to movie soundtracks, which one was better in your mind, Singles or Pulp Fiction?
Singles, hands down. I mean, I love things about Pulp Fiction, obviously, but especially Urge Overkill,
Right, exactly.
Doing Neil Diamond. And I've got great Neil Diamond stories about me and Kings of Leon and Neil Diamond. Some really funny stuff that I'll have to put in the second book. But and Nathan. Oh, my God, it's a great story about us in Dublin, Ireland. But, I love Singles, man. I mean, Singles is from the best soundtrack of the 90s.
Yes.
I mean, you've got Screaming Trees, Nearly Lost You. You've got, I think Seasons by Chris Cornell was just such a great song. The two Westerberg songs that are on there.
Dyslexic Heart especially, yes.
Yeah, and Pearl Jam, State of Love and Trust. I mean, those songs, that record is phenomenal. Singles is, obviously I have relationships with all those artists, but I mean, obviously we were playing them before I even, went to work at MTV, all
right, that. Exactly.
And I love that record. Singles holds up still. It's my favorite soundtrack of that decade.
When it comes to being starstruck, you don't seem like somebody would be starstruck. But Ming, if you put up the photo with him and Paul McCartney, this may be the one time where I go, was this the moment in your life that you sat there and just went, holy shit, I'm standing next to a Beatle?
Well, the story about when I met Paul the first time is better because by this time, it's still always like I'm with a Beatle. But, I hang out with Ringo all the time. So I'm friends with Ringo out here. So Ringo has been like a buddy. It's a funny story. He's, he debunked that whole story that Keith Moon bought Zach, his son, who plays, of course, with Oasis and The Who.
Oasis, yes.
And the best person. And I said to Ringo, I said, Zach's the best drummer that The Who had after Keith died. And then I go to Ringo, I go, and of course, because Keith bought him his first drum set, he goes, no, Matt, I bought him his first drum set. He goes, mine would have a kick, it had a snare, it had a tom-tom, a cymbal, a hi-hat. He goes, it was a small drum set. He goes, 45 minutes later, a truck shows up at our place. And it's Keith Moon sent a gigantic Keith Moon style drum. And he said, he goes, my son looks at me and goes, Dad, whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes, that debunks that story. He did buy the first drum set. He just wasn't interested in it after Keith.
Right.
Ringo told me. But the Paul thing is phenomenal. I got asked to do that special with Paul on the new album. My favorite story with Paul was, and speaking of radio guys, is I was going with Steve Kingston and Scott Shannon to this party.
Two New York legends, without question.
Yeah, and just great guys. Steve Kingston hired me at K-Rock. I love Steve Kingston so much. Scott Shannon and I are good friends. He's such a good dude. Loves like all the old like rock and pop stuff, and we can talk for hours. So much respect to both those guys. So we were having dinner, and then we were invited to this party Paul McCartney was throwing closed, like a private party at Roseland to celebrate Buddy Holly's what would have been his 50th birthday or whatever it was. I think it was, or something like that, whatever the thing was. But, the Smithereens were playing there. Speaking of our hometown guys who I love.
Right.
The Crickets with Sonny Curtis, the guy who wrote I Fought the Law. And, Dion. And it was a great night because I was there and I met Buddy Holly's widow, Maria Elena. She was still beautiful. She was so sweet. Dion was there and Paul was there. And I see a guy walk by him and Paul has this radar. Like if a guy's uncomfortable, Paul's going to keep going because, he's been dealing with that all his life, right? I mean, he's the biggest pop star in history. So Bill Flanagan, who was the editor of Musician Magazine, but also, was a U2's biographer. He and I went to Brazil together for this U2 thing years ago. Bill and I were great friends, and Bill goes, I'm getting ready. Literally, I'm moving in a few weeks to Los Angeles to do Farm Club with Jimmy Iovine and do all that stuff. And I'm like, Bill goes to me, he goes, Matt, have you talked to Paul yet? I'm like, oh, no, man. I don't know. I go, I saw him shine some guy. I go, because I didn't want to meet and be disappointed by one of my heroes. He goes, come on. He goes, go talk to him, man. He goes, he knows who you are. He goes, just go talk to him. So I go up to Paul. And he says hello to me, and I just start talking about his work with Elvis Costello and, Eric Stewart from 10cc. We just start talking about these records, and I just got the balls of steel to say, Paul, it always pissed me off that the critics would always talk shit about Wings and some of your solo stuff. And I said, but you know what? Any guy who can write a song as beautiful as Here, There, and Everywhere, and as metal as Helter Skelter, nobody's got a fucking thing on you. And he looks at me and goes, I really appreciate that. Thank you. He goes, you coming to my party in a week? I'm like, yeah. And of course, I was getting on a plane to go to LA. I wasn't going to say, no, Paul, I'm not coming. But he so appreciated that.
Right.
And it took a lot of balls to say, but it was cool. I mean, I'm just glad. One of those moments. It's like the moment when the guys in Aerosmith, not on camera. But I mean, I'm friends with them. But I remember telling them, like, guys, you disappointed me when I saw you in the 70s. You sounded like shit at the Garden. And the guys in Aerosmith go, dude, we were so, I mean, Joe Perry says to me, he goes, man, we were so fucked up back then. We thought we were still garage. We don't have to pay for a really good PA. Oh, the stories are endless, and they're fun.
And they are. Two more to wrap up. Now, this is the one I think you may pass on, but you'll understand as I explain it. if we ever get back to concerts, imagine this. Same night, same time. These two bands are playing. You got to choose to go to one of the concerts. Now, I know your relationships with both of these bands. Can you choose between Dramarama, who are your boys from Jersey, and The Wonder Stuff, Miles Hunt, and your relationship with them being in their documentary film many years ago? Who do you choose?
Oh, I'd have to see both. You'd have to clone me. I mean,
there you go.
I mean, they're two of my favorite bands ever. You know, like, yes. I mean, I love that you had the Dramarama guys on, and John is one of the greatest. Miles, you know, John and the guys, you know, like Pete Wood and Mark. I love those guys, man. And, you know, obviously Miles and Malk Treese. Those guys are all, you know, that's one of those things where I'd have to clone myself. There's no way that I couldn't go to both. And, you know, remember at the Melody reunion this year, they had a stand-up of me, a cardboard stand-up at the Melody reunion.
Yes.
Really, really funny. Almost as funny as the one, remember for the Wiz, when I was like one of the spokespeople for the Wiz and they had the big stand-up.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yes.
That was fucking funny too.
By the way, the Melody Bar reunion, for those who don't know, is the original bar that Matt used to spin at. Every year they do a reunion in New Brunswick. It is a great party. Find out more, research it, because they're going to hopefully do one in 2021 when we get out of the pandemic. Fingers crossed on that. Yeah. And the wrap up here, I got to figure, is the most asked question of you, what music are you listening to these days?
You know, I'm always listening to new stuff. I love the Gloria.
That's why I figure. Yeah, so I figure everybody has to ask that question of you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I'm listening to new stuff every day because, you know, like I love Gloria's Sons, that band from Canada. They're really great. Des Rock's the guy from New York that I love a lot. Kenny Hoopla. You know, bands. My favorite band of the last 5 years is Royal Blood, hands down. I love Royal Blood. Their first album is a perfect record. They're a two-piece band from Brighton, England. The singer plays through a bass through a bunch of pedals, and they sound like a full band. They're unbelievable. The drummer is like Keith Moon. They're so friggin' good. And so they have 2 albums out. The first one is the best of the 2. They're both great, but the first one, I recommend the first Royal Blood album. Like I said, Kenny Hoopla recently, I you know, there's people like Grandson and Youngblood who are like new. You know, I listen to a lot of different things, you know, and it's really interesting that one of the best new singles out there is by a guy who like started out being like more of a hip hop young guy. That Machine Gun Kelly single, Black Velvet, is like a new wave classic. It sounds like, you know, like sounds like somewhere between Plimsoll's A Million Miles Away and like a Dramarama song. I mean, and Kelly's good. It's great. I go, the best thing on alternative radio is from a guy who started out as a hip hop dude. You know what I mean? So, but no, he's really cool. He's actually a really nice guy. But you know, I listen to so many different things. I'm always looking for new music to listen to. I never stop, you know, listening to new music, new playlists, read reviews. You know, it's really interesting. My old assistant, Alison Hagendorf, who is like a sister to me, I love very much, is the global head of rock for Spotify.
Oh, so wow.
Their rock alternative playlist. So, you know, her and I are super close, you know, and she get everything comes through there as well. So people send me a ton of music still, as they always have. And then I you know, I'll go to the streaming service and you know, check out stuff that's on there all the time. But you know, I still love all the music I've always loved, and I just never stop looking for new music. New music's like a lifeblood for me. I mean, right. That's the hardest thing. Like and I love, you know, Mondo Cosmo. I just the last 2 shows I saw in LA before the pandemic were the Glorious Sons and Des Rocks, and that was such a great show. That was at the El Rey, and then I went to this place which is called the Hi-Hat, and saw Mondo Cosmo, who, you know, is great. He toured with Bastille and just a ton of other people before. He's from Philly. And those were the last 2 shows. And that night, I was so tired, I didn't want to go. I'm like, oh, fuck. It shows at 10:30, 11, man, I'm beat. And then I just said, fuck it, I'm going. And so I literally went down there. I went in, and it was so funny. He called me off on the stage because I was buying his T-shirt. He goes, look, Pinfield's buying a T-shirt. Because I always buy, whenever I go see a band, I buy their T-shirt. Because I know that's the way that they actually, where they get paid. Right. So who I go to see. Like, I mean, you know, bands like Nothing But Thieves. I mean, there's so many people. But I will always buy a T-shirt at every show. And then you see all the other crazy old ones I have. I mean, it's classic.
Oh, absolutely. The man is all about the T-shirt. And to wrap up, I'm going to show you a photo of Matt Pinfield without a T-shirt. It was on the beach. Ming, this is from 25 years ago, almost to the day, by the way. If you got it there. Come on. Ming, it's the one on the beach. There it is.
Oh, my God.
You're in a button-down shirt there. The one rare one.
Well, I used to wear button-down shirts all the time. And I wore some, it's funny. On MTV, because it was the 90s, and it would wardrobe, there were some cool shirts. Like I'd wear the gas station shirts, like looking through the, and then some of the shirts, I look back at them now and go, holy shit, it looks like I'm wearing a lampshade. What the it looks like my grandmother's curtains. What the hell is that?
Dude, I just look back on that photo with you and I'm going, oh my God, I swallowed another human being. Holy shit.
Oh my God. It's so funny, Hey, and one of my favorite stories of all time before you go is you and I spending my birthday in Las Vegas. With our friend Joel Habishaw. He flew you and I down there. We tore that place up. Do you remember? I remember we had so much fun. We did. Boat on Lake Mead. And Joel was, of course, in the Navy. So we're thinking, of course, he's going to be great. He almost flipped the boat.
I know. I remember that. Oh, my God. Now, I should explain. It was 117 degrees, but a humidity of 12%. So we're experiencing dry heat for the first time. We're out on the boat. You can't even take the boat to the Hoover Dam anymore. So what we experienced just on that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And then the kicker, picture 3 grown men at the top of the Hoover Dam. And at the time, there was a band called Sugar with the song Standing on the Edge of the Hoover Dam. And there we were, dancing like this and going, oh, my God, we're standing on the edge of the Hoover Dam. I'm like, yeah.
It was singing. I told Bob Mould that.
You did.
Yeah, I mean, Bob, I hosted his this celebration at the Walt Disney Music Hall here that he and Dave Grohl put on, and they flew me out. It was 2011. I was still living in Jersey. They flew me out to host it. But I've told Bob that story. I'm like, yeah, we stood on the edge of the Hoover Dam singing, standing on the edge of the Hoover Dam. Great song. We had a lot of fun. And it was great,
Yeah,
Many memories on the Jersey Shore, man, all the HTG stuff. I mean, just, I love all my friends out there. I'm just so bummed I can't get on a plane and come back. I mean, literally, somebody's trying to hire me to come do this thing for a Broadway musical to help launch this thing, and I'm like, I can't afford to go into quarantine for 2 weeks and not do my my radio shows, all the other stuff that I have, And it's like, I want to come home. I want to come back and see you all, but man.
That's part of the reason why I'm glad you did this. At least we got an hour of you virtually. At least we had this today, which was a really good thing.
It was a lot of fun. And if you want, just behind me, so you can see those. These are this local artist. He gave me all these prints. One is that I'm like 4 blocks from the Capitol Records building. So there's a Beck poster, it looks like a Capitol Records 45. The one next to it with the girl pulling her T-shirt down. In the Campbell soup can is the Dandy Warhols. There's a Muse one over there, a Gary Newman one there. But this artist, Kai, gave me oh my God, I have 20 posters that he made. They're so incredible. And I still have to ship out. I only have about 10 of my gold records here. I mean, the rest of them are all in New Jersey, and they're going to be here sometime soon.
Yeah,
I got to get my stuff out here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the last thing I want to say, Rob, is this is going to blow your mind. I bought a 1956 RCA record player at an antique shop in Santa Rosa when I moved to San Francisco. Just drive up there for the weekends and hang out and go around an antique shop and then just checking old record stores out with my ex-girlfriend. And I ended up starting a whole new record collection on this coast. So I have another second record collection.
Oh, no.
I mean, the other one is I'm going to, there's other stuff I don't have, but it's insane. It's like I have a room over there that is wall-to-wall vinyl.
That's what I figured. That's what I figured.
Yeah, and at some point I'm going to have to figure it out and give the rest of the records. Once I find out what are doubles, I'll give them away to my friends. Because a lot of people are into vinyl now. Anyway, but I thank you so much for having me on today, Rob. It was fun. Good time.
I had a blast too. Thank you so much for doing it. Let me remind everybody that Fridays at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, it is In a Lonely Place with Matt Pinfield. This past week, he had the lead singer of Semisonic on. Who's coming this Friday? Do we know yet?
Taylor Mumson, from the band called The Pretty Reckless, and she's great. She is like the #1 active rock song right now, Death by Rock and Roll. She's amazing. She used to be in Gossip Girl, believe it or not. And she,
wow.
But she's an incredible front woman, and she's a real good friend of mine. And she was on tour with Soundgarden when Chris passed away, which Chris and I are really, really close friends. So that was devastating to me. But anyway, but she's going to be on. We've had so many people on there, like from new guys like Youngblood to Matt Sorum, and from the Roses and the Cult, and I mean Ed Roland from Collective Soul. It's just so many. Mark Foster the People, who's one of my very, very close buddies out here, friends. And we've had Joey from the Pixies, who is another one of my running brothers out here. So it's just fun. I enjoy doing that show, and I love what you're doing here, Rob. I think it's great.
Thank you. I'm having a blast.
I'm going to have to steal one of your guests soon, Mr. Johnny Easdale. I'm going to have to have him on sometime soon on mine.
I got lucky on that, and I thank you for that. I mean, my friendship with John and Peter have grown over the years thanks to you, so I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, I'm going to get those guys on sometime soon, too, because they have great new music, man. Like,
brilliant album.
Dramarama, both those bands, Wonderstuff and Dramarama, both are still making great music,
Yes,
so
definitely.
Excited. Rob, thank you, brother, for doing this today.
I thank you. I appreciate it. Say hello to our mutual friend Sal Quantizio when you bump into him, please.
Yeah, Sal Quantizio, the best. Right? Him and Tino Balsack, all those guys.
Yes. Yeah, I remember Von Elmo very well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what, Rob? We'll have to do this again later on, because we could tell some other stories about our parties with the cast of Clerks, all the other
yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, Brian O'Halloran from Clerks sends his best to you as well.
Send my love to Brian. He's good, man.
Oh, absolutely will. I'll be back on next week, so until then, thank you so much for this a little extended version of the A Game. Well worth it with Matt Pinfield. Take care. Have a great week ahead.